Good morning, I'm Dana Taylor, in for Taylor Wilson. Today is Wednesday, September 10th, 2025. This is USA Today's The Excerpt. Today, the Health Secretary and his MAHA Commission released their long-awaited second report on childhood health. Plus, immigration arrests begin in Chicago, and Israel escalates its war against Hamas with an airstrike in Qatar. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and his Make America Healthy Again Commission released their second report yesterday. The report, which focuses on childhood health, includes new guidelines for food and pharmaceutical advertising, among many other recommendations. For more on this, I'm now joined by USA Today White House correspondent Swapna Vegonapal Ramaswamy, who joins us just outside the White House. Swapna, thanks for making time for us today.
Thank you for having me, Dana.
So, Swapna, let's talk about what's in this second MAHA report. What made the cut?
So the second MAHA report includes a wide range of topics, everything from a new definition for ultra-processed foods, revised dietary guidelines, there's stuff on food dyes. They're going to be taking a harder look at infant formula standards. It also includes guidelines for food and pharmaceutical advertising and policy reforms. And it also includes a proposal for accreditation reform for medical education programs. And that supposedly will put a focus on treating the root causes of chronic disease in the U.S.
And equally important, perhaps, what didn't make it into the report?
So what didn't make into the report is regulations on pesticides, which a lot of the MAHA base were hoping they would have, and in particular glyphosate, which is part of what makes up the Roundup. So that's been a bit of a disappointment for people. This doesn't talk about regulations to do with pesticides at all. It does not touch that subject.
RFK Jr.'s MAHA supporters weren't all thrilled with his first report either. Who might be happy and who might be unhappy with this second report?
So most of us base, if I had to say, except for the pesticide part, they are very happy about it. And some of them have called it an incredible success story. And they say this is the most progress any health secretary has made. And while they say that, they cite bans on food dyes and additives in ultra-processed food. So they're very happy with it. As far as who's unhappy, it's the people who've been opposed to RFK right from the start. And there's a group called 314 Action, which called the report a performative waste of time. And there are critics who basically say RFK is constantly contradicting himself. He identifies chemical exposure as a cause of chronic illness, while the EPA rolls back environmental regulations. On the one hand, he says we need to advance research, but then on the other, he cuts billions in research on diseases and pediatric cancer and things like that.
Swapna, of course, his second report comes on the heels of a contentious hearing on the Hill last week, with RFK Jr. being grilled for several hours about his anti-vaccine stance. We did a deep dive on that aired Sunday, and there's a link in today's show notes for listeners who are interested. What else is happening in MAHA land?
So it's interesting. Increase enforcement actions against companies that use direct-to-consumer pharmaceutical ads. And they say they do not adequately disclose side effects from medications. And so the administration will be going after social media influencers, social media companies who are often paid to promote pharma product, but they do not always follow the same rules that pharmaceutical companies abide by. And they say that enforcement on this has been lax over the last few years. It's dwindled. So they are planning to basically increase enforcement on this. So that's the latest from Health Secretary Kennedy and his MAHA agenda.
Swapna Vegonapal Ramaswamy is a White House correspondent for USA Today. Thanks for carving out some time.
Thank you for having me, Dana.
President Donald Trump's Operation Midway Blitz is hitting a fever pitch as local leaders claim immigrants are wrongfully being snatched off the street by federal agents looking to root out violent criminals. The White House vehemently argues that the Chicago operation is aimed at targeting undocumented immigrants who've committed crimes. But local community members say it's causing fear among law-abiding neighbors. At least 4 people have been arrested so far, according to the Department of Homeland Security. Trump has said federal agents are targeting, quote, the worst of the worst, end quote, criminals. The 4 people arrested have been charged with crimes, an agency spokesperson said in an official statement. But some Chicagoans say local workers and business owners are being targeted instead of criminals. With regards to a lawsuit filed by pro-immigrant activists after immigration raids in Los Angeles this past June, the Supreme Court on Monday issued a controversial ruling that makes it now legal to use racial profiling in determining who to stop and question about their immigration status. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker responded to the immigration crackdown on Tuesday, attacking border czar Tom Homan.
Well, Tom Homan has long ago acknowledged that he was racially profiling. As a leader of ICE, as somebody who's now advising the president on this new strategy, attacking our Latino communities, we know that that Supreme Court decision yesterday that frankly takes away rights from people across the United States is something that Tom Homan cheers.
Israel launched an unprecedented airstrike in Qatar on Tuesday, setting off alarm bells throughout the Middle East as Israel signaled its willingness to attack Hamas anywhere, anytime. Here to share the reactions of world leaders and analysis of what this escalation means, I'm now joined by USA Today Deputy World Editor Dan Morrison. Thanks for coming on The Excerpt, Dan.
Thanks for having me.
Dan, what were Israel's targets here, and how did Qatar react?
Well, the targets were 2 high-ranking members of Hamas who Israel says were part of the planning of the October 7, 2023 attack on southern Israel that began this long war that's caused so much devastation. Qatar and many governments around the region have very much condemned the attack. It's sort of an unprecedented move to bomb the negotiating table, essentially, in the middle of negotiations, and that's what's happened here.
As you mentioned, this is an unprecedented attack. How are world leaders responding to it?
Well, we'll start at the White House, where they were none too pleased. The president's press secretary told reporters that was counter to the goal of the negotiations of negotiating a ceasefire and returning the hostages, while she did praise the ultimate goal of destroying Hamas. Germany has condemned the attack. Arab countries that recently normalized relations with Israel, like the United Arab Emirates, have condemned the attack, and even Pope Leo has expressed grave concern over it.
Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu cited the deadly Monday attack outside of Jerusalem as the reason for the airstrike. What happened there?
6 Israelis were killed by a pair of gunmen on the outskirts of Jerusalem at a bus stop, and this attack, Hamas's military wing later claimed responsibility for this attack, sort of an attempt to bring the war back to Israel where it started in the first place in 2023. Israel's response has been to show that they will not stand for this and that there's no bar to them striking whoever they wish to strike, whatever the consequences might be.
Dan, does this attack spell the end of the Israeli-Hamas peace negotiations?
That's the big question, is how do they move forward from here? It seems like the United States will push for the talks to continue. But again, when you have a country like Qatar, which is a wealthy emirate that has made itself one of the crossroads of the region, it hosts a major American military base and it hosts the Hamas political wing. It has been a place where people on very different sides of an issue can go to talk, and now they're very offended, to say the least.
As of early this month, Israeli officials said that they estimate that approximately 20 of the remaining 48 hostages taken in the October 7th attacks are still alive in Gaza. How did the families react?
The Association for the Families of People Taken Hostage in this October 7 attacks have issued a statement showing their, grave concern for what might happen to the survivors, to the surviving hostages as a result of this. They cite testimony from other hostages who have been released that they were subject to violent reprisal for Israeli military actions.
Israel has also intensified its attacks on Gaza City, dropping thousands of leaflets directing Palestinians to where they might find safety. What's happening on the ground there?
So Israel is pressing forward with an attack on Gaza City in an attempt to degrade and eventually wipe out Hamas and its military control of the Gaza Strip. all sorts of international observers and the United Nations say at tremendous humanitarian cost to the Palestinians who live in Gaza. From the Israeli perspective, there is nothing that can get in the way of eliminating this threat after the October 7 attacks. And one of our reporters spoke with a former national security advisor to Benjamin Netanyahu, who said there's no going back to the way it was, that they simply cannot stop until they've eliminated Hamas. Others say that Hamas simply can't be eliminated and the humanitarian cost is too high.
Dan Morrison is a deputy world editor for USA Today. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks for having me.
The Supreme Court announced yesterday that it will decide the fate of the global tariffs President Donald Trump has used to raise revenue, spur manufacturing, and exert political pressure on other countries. The tariffs, the centerpiece of Trump's economic agenda, are also the first major test of his aggressive assertion of presidential powers to fully reach the high court. The court agreed to hear Trump's appeal of lower court rulings that he overstepped when he invoked a 1977 law to impose tariffs on imports from most of the world's countries. Curtis Bradley, an expert on foreign relation law at the University of Chicago Law School, said the case sets up a clash between the High Court's usual deference to presidents on foreign affairs and its concern about the executive branch claiming authority it wasn't clearly given by Congress. The court, which has a 6-3 conservative majority, also agreed to fast-track the appeal. The justices will hear arguments in early November. If the Supreme Court rules against the Trump administration, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has said that the U.S. will have to send refunds to countries around the world. Beyond grappling with Congress and foreign adversaries, President Donald Trump will be hosting the White House's first UFC fight next summer. Trump, a longtime fan of the Ultimate Fighting Championship, planned the event for up to 20,000 spectators and a live television audience. The Cardiff Fights of Mixed Martial Arts will be part of the year-long celebrations for the country's 250th anniversary. While building an 8-sided cage on the South Lawn or weighing athletes at the Lincoln Memorial for the UFC would be unusual, the historic grounds have routinely hosted sports ranging from tennis to t-ball for over a century. Teddy Roosevelt built a tennis court in 1902 near what is now called the West Wing, in the shadow of the office building that housed the State, War, and Navy Department, according to the White House Historical Association. On the milder side, bowling lanes were first installed indoors in 1947, and Richard Nixon was an avid bowler. First ever, Dwight Eisenhower installed a putting green during the 1950s that Trump has embellished. The South Lawn also occasionally became the coolest place for ice skating when Jimmy Carter in 1980 and Joe Biden in 2023 built temporary rinks for the holidays. And in 2026, we'll have UFC fighting. And later today, what if the key to better hurricane forecasts isn't in space, but swimming in the ocean? Scientists are researching the possibility of enlisting sharks as roving weather scouts.
The big thing that sharks do that satellites don't do is they dive underwater. So they come to the surface and they dive down deep. Many go very, very deep, thousands of meters into the ocean. As they dive down, the tag is collecting data. And then when they pop back up, it transmits it.
University of Delaware scientist Aaron Carlisle explains how shark-powered forecasts could transform hurricane predictions and maybe even our view of sharks themselves. You can catch my conversation with Aaron today at 4 p.m. Eastern, right here on The Excerpt. Thanks for listening to USA Today's The Excerpt. You can get the podcast wherever you get your audio. If you use a smart speaker, just ask for The Excerpt. I'm Dana Taylor, filling in for Taylor Wilson. I'll be back tomorrow with more of The Excerpt from USA Today.